I got plenty.
They have all kinds.
I did not bring your water.
I didn't realize I was about to go in. They should give us a roster. People that come here, let us know who and what the types of businesses are. That's kind of what I was hoping for.
How are you?
Okay, we ready to get started?
Last year.
Well, good evening. Welcome to this session 2 of the Business Challenge, and thank you for your patience. Blame Mother Nature for Tuesday night that we had to reschedule. We can't control that. I wish we could, because it would already be springtime. We'd be planning if I had any control over it. How's everybody doing so far with the challenge, working on your business plan and so forth? Any issues? I know a number of people have said that the flash drives that they received did not have all the content on it. What I will do is send an email to a link to a Dropbox folder that has everything, and then I'll continue populating that each week as presenters provide business, their presentations, any materials. So I'm sorry about that, so you can just upload or download all the information to the flash drive so you can have it. This is one of our favorite sessions, is tonight, talking about, issues when you're starting and growing your business. And we are blessed to have 3 professionals here in Washington County to be with us tonight. I want to introduce John Martin with Penn Stewart, Mike Speaker with Speaker Blevins, which is just across the street, and Brian Wampler, who's with Wampler Insurance. So tonight, what we'll do, I think, to make things easier for you all, how about we continue practicing our business pitch. Remember, 30 seconds to do that quick pitch. But let's go around the room, introduce yourself, let these folks know what they're going to be doing, and that will help them when they are responding, that they can get a feel of who's in the room and what their plans are here in Washington County. So how about we start over here, Dwayne?
Okay. Well, I'm Dwayne Duffield. I own Beginnings to Go, which is a medic use. And we're just looking to expand for something a bit bigger. What people are wanting, they're wanting to be able to sit down and instead of have everything to go at this time. So that's kind of what I'm striving for.
Hello, I'm Samuel Fleener. I'm from Hambones Entertainments LLC. We are a small events planning business. We've been open since 2015, and we do balloons for birthday parties, corporate events, and pretty much any event you can think of. But we are looking to expand into bounce houses.
I'm Dorothy Dye from down in Mendota, and Katie and I are going to open up an old mercantile store that's been there for many years into a type of small eatery, sandwich shop, plus give classes for craft classes and have retail merchandise and a small convenience store.
My name is Cassie. I build a basket in Abingdon. I do custom gift baskets, corporate gifting, personalized gifts. We deliver just about anything that you need as far as gifts go. We do that.
My name's Stephanie Howard, and I am the owner of Playdate in Abingdon. Playdate indoor playground and party venue for kids ages 10 and under. Yep. And we are brand new. We've been here for been open 6 months now. And a little backstory, which I've already told you guys last week. I'm a mom to three kids under the age of 7. So I know what it's like, and I know the need in the area for a safe, clean being the major, safe and clean and fun indoor playground for our young kids. And also we do public parties as well as private parties. And I'm also a Hokie. I forgot to say that last time. So, thank you.
Hello, I'm Kevin Lyons, owner of Abington Emporium and Collectibles, and we are looking forward to the new year. We've got a lot of expanded products, including Miss Homemakers over here beside of me with Highland Hemp. We're carrying their CBD oils, and we are also going to be carrying other products related to that, as well as Young Living oils, trying to keep them, separate, but having the benefits of both of them. I also carry vintage comics, new comics, buck knives, and just electronics. We're trying to just broaden our horizon with just carrying more. Of course, it is an emporium, so we need to carry lots of different products. We have a suggestion box in the store. If there's anything you can't find in Abington, let us help you find. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Donna Akers. I'm a regional historian, published author, and freelance writer and editor. And my project is to create guided walking tours of Abington, including food tours, food tastings, wine tastings, desserts, and possibly historic cemetery tours, and also wild food foraging at a local farm.
My name is Rhonda Homeacre. Thanks, Kevin.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm with Highlands Hemp. We got started in September of this year. We are a manufacturer of CBD oil products. We're also working on a cosmetic line as we speak. We're in several pharmacies, Blue Hills Market in town, things like that, and we're just excited to continue to grow.
My name's Alan Necessary. I own Sarge's Pay Lake and Campground. I'm getting ready to start my 3rd year of being in business. Currently expanded last year, and we're expanding again this year. So business is good. So, all I got.
I'm Tanya Fuller, and this is Becca Starby. I own Downtown Decon Bakery in Damascus. We opened in May. Becca owns the Damascus Mercantile. We are both expanding. We've outgrown our spaces, so we're going to combine to open a bakery, storefront, coffee house.
I'm Diana Blackburn, and I'm researching the feasibility of starting a small group guided tours. These would be 3 to 7 day immersion tours into the craft culture and heritage and natural beauty of Southwest Virginia.
My name is Dave Rasnick. I'm really kind of in the investigation and research in stage 2, beginning looking into glamping, which is as opposed to traditional camping, a little more upscale, offers a little bit different experience, more family friendly than what the traditional camping experience would offer.
I'm Paul Baker. I'm the owner of Turf Pros, which is a new lawn and garden retail center at exit 17 next to Mahoney's. We opened, I guess we've been open 2 weeks, I suppose. I started Turf Pros with the intention that the homeowners needed somewhere to go that was small enough that they felt comfortable enough to buy equipment, and they didn't feel just like a number, which is sort of what you get at the box stores. And also, we have enough certifications that it doesn't matter whether you own a Craftsman, John Deere. We've covered all makes and models, so irregardless of where you bought your mower, you can bring it to us to get parts and service.
My name's Jack Henry. I'm in the early stages of, designing, starting a business, and it's a manufacturing in the industrial cannabis side. So I want to make it where it could be a new cash crop for the farmers, kind of like how the old tobacco used to be. It'd be, warehouses and stuff. But basically, I would buy that from the farmers and then split it, manufacture it, or whatever it needs to be processed, and then either manufacture my own stuff or sell it to the companies that, use it like plastics and papers, fibers, ropes, things like that.
Back here. Oh, sorry.
I'm Patty Shelton, and this is my partner Teresa Childress, and we're getting ready to open Little Downtown Donuts on Main Street in Abingdon. It's a kind of custom build your own donut format, kind of like your Sweet Frog or Swirl, and we're gonna have donuts and coffee to start out with. So we're getting there.
These are fresh made all day. I saw your sign.
Where are you guys at?
We're actually right across the street from the cargo station in town. It's like a little barn-shaped building. Right
Okay, yep.
We're on round 2 of getting the floors done again, so it's been a slow roll. We've had some ventilation work that's had to be done, and that's taking time, but we're getting there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Hello, I'm Dean Barr. I'm the proprietor of the Gallery of Barr Photographics at 152 East Main Street. We are purveyors of fine art. We do custom framing. We have an upscale gift shop, and we offer photography services.
My name is Elizabeth Gardner, and my husband and I just bought Abingdon Vineyards. And we are looking to remodel our kitchen in order to create a culinary center there. So we want to provide farm-to-table cooking classes and also have it serve as a commissary kitchen for other local food businesses and caterers. We'll also be offering weddings and events there, so definitely an upgraded kitchen. Thank you.
I'm Mark Payne. This is Justin Digg, Jerry Bressoir, and Tom McMullen. We're the founders of Tumbling Creek Cider Company. We're a small craft hard apple cider company focusing on regionally sourced apples and regional botanicals. At the same time, we're aiming to help revitalize the local apple industry and sort of along the same lines of farm to table kind of an ethos.
That it? Well, guys, I will turn it over to you if you want to share a little bit about your background and what you do, and then I hope everybody brought a list of questions. And I hope that things, okay, we'll have Lana start with the first question.
You only get 30 seconds.
You want to share a little bit about you and Ken Stewart, so let's go through there quickly.
Sure. My name is John Martin, and I'm a shareholder with the law firm of Penn Stewart. We've got offices here in Abingdon, Bristol, Johnson City, and also in Richmond. We do a wide variety of commercial-related legal work, various types of insurance defense, and various types of business practice. There are about 40 lawyers in the firm now, so it's grown quite a bit. Hit 25 years of practice this year, 17 of those with Penn Stewart. I did mostly small business, well, I do most of the workers' compensation, defense, employment law, and small business work. So, full disclosure, Ms. Honecker is a lovely client of mine and a good friend for years. So we had Little League children together, so, but fantastic ideas for all of you. Sound really interesting.
A lot of good concepts out there, a lot of good ideas. My name is Mike Spiegler. I'm a CPA with Spiegler Blevins and Company. My office is right across the street. We serve primarily small and medium-sized businesses. Tax and accounting work is 80% of our work. I've been doing this for 35 years. I think I'm in my 36th year now. And we utilize a lot of technology. We're very hands-on type of firm.
I'm Brian Wampler, and with Wampler's Insurance. I've been doing insurance for 20 years now, and my dad started the agency 21 years ago. So as a family-owned agency, we're independent. We sell auto, home, business, life, health, a little bit of everything, and that's about it.
Okay, Diana, you start us
Oh,
off.
so-
First question.
So I will, and this really isn't a list of my questions, but anyway, this is my question. So, the concept for my business is small group tours, and the idea is to have a van that would comfortably seat around 12 people. We pull the luggage in a cart in a wagon in the back, a covered wagon in the back, and these would be, sort of like I said, 3 to 7 day tours. And I would partner with, we'd stay in local hotels, like boutique hotels, like Lexington Hotel and Floyd, Hotel Floyd. We go to Adventure Mendota and kayak and do, biking and, all of these different activities. So we would, I'd be transporting people each day. We'd be traveling to a different area, primarily here in Southwest Virginia, basically from Roanoke west to Lee County. And so, I'm gonna be hauling people around in my vehicle. We'll be carrying their luggage around in a wagon going behind me. So what do you think the biggest liability concerns would be for, and, of course, there'd be all kinds of waivers and things like that they sign. But what do you think would be the biggest liability issues that I should be concerned about?
Well, and I don't do as much liability work as others, but it would seem to me like the initial thought that would come to my mind is that you have 12 passengers in the vehicle that either you or an agent of you would be driving.
Right.
So, if a single vehicle accident occurred, then you have 12 potential lawsuits against you. And once you have a situation like that, it would depend on the facts of the circumstances, but, you've got 12 different stories of what happened. So, you really do, in my mind, you would really want to make sure that you have incredible insurance coverage. Because I think that's the, there's, even if you start out with 12 of your dearest friends, you encounter an accident on the road, it only takes one of those people to bring a lawsuit that puts an end to your business. So I would make sure that I was covered. I would talk to a specialist who can address waivers, because the scope of your waiver is probably never going to be quite good enough. If you're talking about an adventure touring company, then you're talking about situations that you can't plan for. So that's the other thing is, even if you can craft a waiver that covers most of your events and forewarns folks enough of the risk that they're taking, you're probably always going to run into something that could come up. So I would also check with I would see what kind of insurance vehicles are out there for umbrella type policies and things like that. There are a number of things like that, but I think just hearing you speak, the first major concern that I would have is you're inviting these people to hop in a vehicle and go off to, see the great Southwest Virginia area. So, you're automatically creating some liability there. So, then the other thing, I guess, wherever you take these folks, you would want to make sure that all the people who partner with you have their own waivers, because now you're bringing these folks onto their property. You're potentially liable to them and yourself. So, anywhere you go, you would want to make sure that you have known about their waivers in advance. You might even accumulate all of the waivers from all of the vendors and people you're going to deal with and have those on file when you start your trip. You know, 'cause you don't want somebody to say, God, we went to, you know, Adventure Mendota, I didn't know that, I can't swim. You know, those are all kinds of things that, you know, a lot of planning is gonna help reduce all of that. We always talk about managing the expectations of clients, and I think that's kind of what you're doing too, is, you know, you can't provide them an incident-free event, no matter how well you plan, but you can make them aware of the fact that, you know, this is a potential issue here or there, or if we're going out in the woods, you could get stung by a bee, those kinds of things. And then the last thought I have on that is, you know, you and your staff may want to be as well versed in first aid and that kind of first responder treatment, you know, care, just for the potential that could arise.
Right.
Yeah, I would definitely make sure the liability limits and have the a BCL, business catastrophic liability policy to, you definitely want to have as much coverage as possible, because that could be a huge exposure. And I hate to say it's a sue society out there, so, and there's always an attorney out there that.
You sound like that's a bad thing.
Man's gotta make a living.
But there's always a good attorney that can find loopholes, and yeah, I would definitely have someone, a specialist, look into the waivers and all that.
So, I mean, insurance for both vehicle coverage and then the business liability.
Yeah. And probably, you probably can get like an inland marine coverage to cover the luggage. You have to check with the carrier, but there'd be a good possibility you get like an inland marine coverage to cover the property of others that's in your care, custody, and control. So it's definitely, I don't know, it might be a specialty insurance that would be looking at that type of stuff. I don't know if like your normal insurance would cover that, because that's just a huge exposure.
Okay, all right. I have a few questions, and I think at least a couple per person. So we'll start with John. I have a question about what we were kind of talking about here with what you called a waiver. For an indoor playground, we require what we call a release. And correct me if I'm wrong, I've been told or guided by another lawyer to, it's a release because they're releasing you from liability. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In saying that it's, for me, it would be called a release. Now,
Correct, and the terms are slightly interchangeable, but that's what you're doing. You're asking them in advance to waive or release you from any liability you might have.
Okay. Now, at first, when we first started, I had them sign this release that we had made up every time they came with their kiddos. And then, you know, I had some people, they're tired of signing it every time. So I went back. Yeah. Oh, they got 3 kids hanging off of them. We have to do this again. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not just Jump. I don't have that capability to just have it, you know, everything electronic yet. But, so we went from there to, I went back to my lawyer, and he said, he thought, this is just, I wouldn't say my lawyer, but an advisor, that as long as we had it on file, because it's written in there that it covers forever. Is that true? Because I'm a little nervous, because now if I know them and I know they've signed it, they pass me by. And if that is true, how strong does it hold up in court, for real, in Virginia?
Yeah, and again, that's not really an area that I do a lot of work in, but the concern that I would have, you know, one of the things that makes the waiver or the release actionable is that you're advising them of all the risk that they're taking. And fully advised of the risk, they sign on and say, I'll do it anyway. And so, you know, if you have a release or a waiver that's on file for 16 months because they come in every week and you do some changes, you know, that would be a concern to me.
Like additions or new equipment or anything, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And that's going to happen?
Yeah. And so those are just, you know, the problem is you just never know when somebody's gonna become very irascible and wanna take you on in a legal setting. And so, you know, it does you no good if you think you have an agreement with them and then they're saying in court, well, I didn't know she had this, or I didn't know she had that. You know, I think in theory it could work like that, but again, you know, if you really find yourself in a challenge, you could lose. You know, and that would be a concern that I would have about just keeping a release on file.
Would you advise that they sign every time, or?
If it were me, I would say yes. That way you just, and I know it's, I know it's burdensome, but it's like, you know, that's just part of the cost of doing business.
Just
you
make
know?
a stand. Make a stand of it every time. Okay, all right.
You're just covering your butt.
I know, and I'm trying, and I try to tell, you know, but, yeah, it is what it is.
Well, here's one thing I would tell you. Think about it like this. One claim that you have against you that's either settled because there's potential it's going to win at court, or it goes to court and it wins. You know, how much revenue are you going to lose from that? How much can you sustain to lose and still stay in business? You know, that's the concern that I would have. So, you know, it's a little bit like lottery math, 1 in 24 billion gajillion, but you know, you just never know, and you just never want to be in that situation. So, I mean, that's my thinking about it. You know, I always tell everybody when you talk to a lawyer, it's like talking to Chicken Little, the sky's always falling, but
Well,
you know, you try to foresee the problems the best way you can.
all right, so, what do I do?
Print a lot of waivers.
Okay, that's what I'm doing. That's- thank you.
You know, you can send those off to print companies and get them by the box
That's what I'm
loads.
doing. I just, like the big guys, Just Jump, you know, it's not even in my range, but still, once you've signed one electronically, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have to do it again.
No, it's done.
But that's Tennessee, I don't know.
Well, and I will tell you too, you gotta be really careful, because I know on good authority that there are some problems with the waivers that all of these companies like Just Jump have in Tennessee. Because there are some loopholes with regard to the sufficiency of who can actually sign a waiver in those situations. There was talk about legislation, and I'm licensed in Tennessee and Virginia. I don't do as much work in Tennessee, but there were some problems with the ability for companies like Just Jump to actually have their clientele sign a waiver that was good enough. And so with the popularity of those companies coming around, there was some talk that the Tennessee legislature would change those laws. I don't know if that's happened or not. So, you know, that's one of those areas where you really do want to kind of talk to someone who does it a lot or knows well about it, you know, knows enough about it to give you up-to-date advice.
John, could she, instead of printing a waiver every single time, could she get a waiver that maybe had 5 or 10 separate lines, and each time they visited, they signed and dated a line?
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
something we could do.
Yep,
Make it
just sort of keep that.
I'd like to add one thing. I've been in business since my 3rd year. I've got a waiver for my campground. I get Boy Scouts up there all the time in the trail lot. Every time, and I've had repeat ones come up, well, I signed this. Yeah, but, you know,
The way it is.
every time that they show up, they're gonna have 1 or 2 different kids. Who's not to say that your people that's visiting, well, I got a guest with me, he's
And I'm
not snuck by
assuming-
you never saw him. So technically, so that's what mine, when he told me, he says they sign it every time. He said, take the time, make them sign it every time, because especially with me, you don't know, these are not the same kids, some of them are, but most of the time, there's 1 or 2 different kids with them.
Well, just
So
as she
if one kid
said,
gets by you and he's not,
And I'm not there every day, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm trying my hardest. with-
and that's what he told me, just make sure they sign it every time. He said, that's the safest way, the best way to do it.
And questions regarding, do you have an appropriate guardian who has authority to sign that, or is that like their best buddy's parent, mom?
Well, and I think there's some favorable case law. If somebody represents to you that they're the guardian of this child and they sign, you know, you're acting on good faith, you know, that's not necessarily, I mean, it could be a problem, but I would think that the person that tells you they've got a child under their custody, they take that child onto your property and they get hurt, they're the ones that are probably dealing with the liability. But, you know, I think as long as you are following the protocol that you know, there's no way you can know they're lying to you. You know, but anyway.
Oh, can I go with a question for Mike?
Okay.
I don't want to take up everybody's time. This is just a quick question, I hope. And I think that a lot might help some others in here. We don't have a kitchen. We sell just dry goods, I guess. Sam's Club good, chips, candies, that sort of thing. So I'm tax exempt with Sam's Club, okay? So when I can purchase all my product there, and then I charge tax on this end, mine, all right? But I also do private parties. And with my CPA that I've been working with in Lebanon, it's such a unique venue. Like, it's kind of, I'm not getting any straight answers, but I'm not sure how to charge my tax on my products at the party. Like, I provide pizza and chips in drink boxes. I got, you know, the pizza, I'm paying city, town tax, I'm paying twice its food tax on my pizza when I buy it for the party. How do I charge? I feel like I'm paying way too much tax.
Yeah.
Is there a form
and
for that?
I did too, actually.
Is there a form for that? Because everyone's like Papa John's or Domino's.
Is there a form for?
To where I can be tax exempt from on my end for buying the pizza for my party?
Yeah, you have. There's a tax exempt ST.
What is it?
Whatever it is that you
My
can submit.
CPA can't find it.
ST9 is for your sales tax for the state, and if you call the state and tell them that, you can get that tax exempt, but I do the ST9.
ST9.
And you can file that electronically, you don't have to mail it in.
Okay. No, I'm talking about.
Just don't include your snacks.
No, I'm not talking. I'm talking about
That's
when
all.
I'm
She's
buying
saying
a
so
pizza
she
for the
can't
party.
pay
Right.
taxes on the pizza when she goes to Papa John's, right?
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's.
You're saying like the county, the state, and a meals tax.
Yeah, I'm paying all
Probably.
that stuff when I'm buying the pizza. So I guess I just pay it and then I try to charge it on my other. to
Yeah,
get it
I
back.
think, you know, there's some commercial out there that says, I've got people that do sales tax, I do more income tax. But I'm pretty sure that as long as you wrap everything in one fee and don't separately charge for it, that you don't have to charge sales tax.
Is that right?
I'm pretty sure.
Because most of my, I mean, we know with these private party packages,
Right.
it's all,
It's all
not
one fee.
product.
Right, it's all one fee.
It's
It
the
includes-
service.
yes.
It's the venue, right. But there, I can kind of classify it a
But I
little
think,
bit.
but I think you have to pay your sales tax on your purchases.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to worry about charging
Good
it
deal.
on the sales side. If you wrap it all in one fee and don't separately state it, I'm pretty sure that's the way you go.
We'll see how, good.
But
That
I'd
makes
be
me
more than
feel
happy
better.
to get the answer.
Okay, thank you. All right. One more. Mr. Wampler. So I'm thinking of expanding, or I hope to expand and have an outdoor area. Okay, I've talked with my landlord, and he's totally fine with it, because we have a space, like an alleyway beside Playdate, that we could potentially have some places for the parents to sit and tan their legs in the summertime, and some, water tables, and that sort of thing. Would that change, or would we need a different coverage or more coverage?
What's gonna be outside? It depends.
Not a water park like I want, but maybe just some like sensory tables. So like a water table, if you know what that is, it's just a play table with water in it, maybe some little toys, that sort of thing. Nothing, no water slides. That yeah, no water slides, nothing like that. So just like water play toys, I'm expanding or adding on. Does that change insurance, or should I still be? Does it? What's it?
Is it gonna be a fence around it?
Yes.
Okay.
Big privacy.
So the only way
fence.
to get in and out is through your,
Well, I think you would have to enter from the outside. I don't think you could enter from inside of Playdate.
okay.
So there's an entrance to the outdoor area, there's an entrance to the indoor area.
It shouldn't be a problem, but you just gotta check on, you just gotta make sure that just not anybody can get back there.
Right.
Like if is it gonna be just for the adults or the children?
It's for adults and children.
So if you got children back there and
Mhm.
you don't, it's not one of the guardians or the parents, they could be exposed liability.
Same as if they were inside, right? 'Cause there's a door.
Right, but I'm just saying, if somebody didn't go inside and sign the form,
Right, they can't, without coming to me first.
right.
Okay, that would be.
But if
the
they,
main-
if there's just a
main-
way they can go inside without signing the form,
Right.
then that could,
Potentially,
yeah,
yeah.
You'd have to have like
A type of nuisance.
yeah.
Type dynamic.
Yeah,
Okay,
you could-
all right, I won't,
You could, I mean, it could be an exposure that you have to figure out how to, you just gotta figure out how to make sure,
they see me first, or,
yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I know like Papa John's before you leave, not Papa John's, but, take my stepson.
Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, Chuck E.
Chuck E.
Cheese.
Cheese. Uh-huh.
They got those, like, before you can, when you enter, you got like,
mm-hmm.
Black
and when
light.
you leave, yeah, got like that black light, so you don't, I guess it's just an extra layer to make sure that a certain kid don't go with us, somebody that.
But that would be a potential risk anyway.
Yeah.
For for the playground. Okay, thank you.
Could you all, one of the prizes that's on offer this year is from Emory Henry College, and they said that they prefer a company that's a B corporation. So can you talk something about B corporations and in particular, what are the disadvantages to doing that?
What's a B corporation? The C corporation?
No, B.
B Corp. It's for community-based companies. Virginia Community Capital, we're a B Corp. And that's where we focus,
So it's a nonprofit?
yes.
No, it's not a nonprofit, it's a for-profit.
Well, we're a nonprofit.
It's a corporation with nonprofit status on
But
it.
we are a B Corp.
It's a designation for
I think it's more, I
for-profit.
feel like it's more like a certification style label than actual, it's not, has nothing to do with the structure, I think, of a business.
You know, there's, as far as I know, there's only one type of corporation, and, that's a corporation. And from a tax standpoint, you could be taxed as a C corporation or as an S corporation. You also have some limited liability companies, little limited liabilities, they call them corporations in Virginia, I don't even know, LLCs, but I'm not familiar with a B corporation. But but from a tax standpoint, I can, if there's no nonprofit veil over it, then it's gonna be taxed like a C corporation, which just means that any income that's earned is gonna be taxed to the corporation.
I think it's more based on like your mission statement and the values that you believe in. That's what I
Right.
understand. So it really doesn't have anything to do with your tax base at all.
Well, yeah, that's the question, right? And then what it does to a corporation legally as well, if it does anything.
Because it's attractive from our ethos focused on stimulating economic agriculture activity and giving people a venue an incentive to get back into agriculture, producing orchards and apples and other commodities, and giving an outlet for people to buy that. So that is appealing to us in theory, but devil's in the details.
Yeah, it is a private certification issued for nonprofit companies.
Private certification.
That's what Google says.
John, I had a question. You mentioned the veil. We've got a group of 4 partners, and we're currently formed under a multi-party LLC. And one of our concerns is limiting business liability on a personal level. We've also got, our farm is leasing, or will be leasing, the production area to the business. And so then there's some facilities liability for us as a leaseor. So I was interested if there's any additional things we should be focusing on to limit that personal liability. From what I understand, since we're not a sole proprietor LLC, that protects us to some extent on the whole piercing corporate veil. But particularly from a leaseor point of view, if there's any aspects that we should be aware of or focused on.
Well, I mean, you already have your LLC underway, correct? Okay. And you've got your operating agreement? Okay. the first thing I would encourage you to do is just follow your operating agreement, because as long as you have the LLC and you follow your operating agreement, then you're ostensibly working within the meaning of the statute. You know, there's a statute that tells you can form an LLC, a corporation, there's a partnership act. So, you know, as long as you're following your operating agreement, you're putting yourself forward as the LLC, that's a major issue, because, you know, your ability to incur debt should be addressed in the operating agreement. You know, if you go to a bank and want to borrow money, they're going to want to see your operating agreement. And so basically, if you're acting within the scope of your operating agreement, then you're acting as the LLC. As long as you continue to act as the LLC, that's one of the main factors in determining that it's the LLC that carries the liability and not the individual members, okay? So that's one thing I would always try to do, is make sure that you're following, you know, when you have 4 members, it's a little more difficult than, as you said, a sole proprietorship LLC or a solo member LLC. But a solo member LLC can still act in the same way, as long as it's putting itself forward as incurring the debt for the LLC. The problem that you run into most of the time when you want to incur debt for an LLC, especially one that's a new company, most of your lenders are going to say, that's fine, but I want some security owners sign and, you know, be responsible 25% each for the debt.
Right.
So, you know, you're just a co-signer to your own LLC.
And that was one of the reasons we structured our facility financing. We kind of split that out and then brought that back to the company as a straight lease arrangement to try to avoid some of the challenges.
And I think those are all sound measures, because, you know, if you have a facility that you're leasing as an LLC, you know, do you all have interest in the facility yourselves as well?
Only as through the company renting it.
Okay, then I think that's appropriate. That's the way I would recommend the client handle that, you know, structure the lease through the LLC to the facility, so that, you know, the main thing is you're just operating, and you want to be as open as you can, because you never have to worry about somebody saying they want to pierce a corporate veil if they've always understood they've dealt with the LLC. You know, you only get into those situations where somebody said, wait a minute, they're trying to avoid debt, pull the wool over my eyes, and they're trying to abscond with the money when, you know, I wasn't really sure who I was dealing with. You know, as long as everybody knows they're lending money to the LLC, and the owners then are just co-signers to the debt, you know, all of those transactions need to be as clear cut as they can be.
Right. And that, I guess most of our concern would be from a liability or lawsuit point of view. And we get some dynamics for you, Brian, on structuring, like we've got an umbrella policy on our personal homeowners, which currently covers the barn, but then there's separating those two out from a liability point of view. Defining that line may be tricky when we have people visit the production facility and my house is 100 yards away.
Well, and Mike brought up an excellent point. I presume that you have a written lease from the LLC to the facility.
We do.
You know, there's always a chance that somebody can say these things are merged, but as long as your pattern is to continue to put the LLC out as the business operator, you know, theoretically, so for instance, all of us carry our own version of malpractice insurance, because individually, if my business is to provide legal advice to you, my company is liable, Penn Stewart is liable for my errors, but I'm also personally liable because I'm the one that gave that advice. But if my company goes out and borrows money and I don't have to co-sign and my company defaults, then I'm not liable for that money, as long as I don't have a personal signature on board. I lose my interest that I have in the company in terms of surrendering assets or whatever they might have to satisfy that debt. The same way with Mike and Brian. I mean, we each have our own personal malpractice coverage, but it sort of merges because you can't separate personal or professional services from the company that's provided, but you can separate business liabilities. So you just need to, where possible, make sure that you operate as the LLC and not as an individual off in partnership with the LLC.
And I would add that you don't commingle transactions. In other words, make sure that the operating entity is paying all of its own expenses and collecting its own money, and the building entity or the farm entity is doing the same, that you're not paying one another's expenses.
Which we've got
collecting one
like a
another's income.
reimbursement type structure if someone needs to go.
Right. Occasional.
Purchase paper towels or
Right.
something like that. One other question that we had was on, where did it go? Workers' compensation. I know ideally it's wise to go ahead and get it regardless. We're probably, at least for year zero, going to be self-sourcing a lot of our labor, where we've got 4 partners. Would that go towards the 3 or more count, which would then require the workers' comp?
Yeah, like the rule of thumb, was this
3.
off the Virginia workers' comp? It says as a general rule, a business with more than 2 employees is required to carry workers' compensation coverage. So
Right.
even though you're excluded in the LLC, well, you don't exclude yourself, but where there's an LLC, you're still considered 4. So, but you don't, if you have it, you can exclude yourself from the workers' comp, but you're past that limit, so.
Yeah, I would add, I do a lot of workers' comp, and as Brian said, you basically have enough members to be responsible if you had a work-related injury. The thing that Brian was talking about, there's a provision in the statute that allows an owner or someone with significant interest in the company to write themselves out of the insurance coverage. Now, that doesn't mean you write yourself out for purposes of the number counted, but it just means that you basically have enough interest in the company that you can waive your interest in being covered by your insurance, and that will affect your premium considerably, okay? So if the 4 of you as equal owners waive your coverage, then you don't have to carry your coverage on yourself. That should reduce your premiums, but you already, if you have someone who comes in and works 3 days a week for you, and they get hurt, you have enough employees to be responsible to carry workers' comp. So anybody else that would come on, part-time or not, to help you with anything is automatically under the Workers' Compensation Act. You would be responsible. If you didn't have coverage and they were injured, Virginia has this whole system for uninsured individuals to file against, and then the company becomes liable to pay back the state of Virginia, the uninsured fund.
Technically, you're past that threshold.
And it all depends on the definition of work, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can go on the Virginia workers' comp site and I mean, basically, if you're like say you're a contractor and you hired just subs, you don't have any employees, but you hire subs. So, I mean, if they get hurt, they're gonna be coming back.
Yeah, there's a section in the Workers' Comp Act regarding statutory employees. So basically, if you hire someone to do part of your trade, business, or occupation, now a true independent contractor, you're a hard cider manufacturer, you hire someone to come in and paint your building and they get hurt, they're a true independent contractor. That's not your responsibility.
Right.
But if you're out doing, work in the field or work in the facility to prep, to make a run of cider, and you hire someone to come in for 3 days to do whatever, it's very likely that you're their statutory employer, if they get hurt. And as Brian was saying, you're over the number, so automatically you have 4, that subcontractor is 5, you're well past 3 employees.
It says for a contractor or other business that hires subcontractors to assist in their trade, business, or to complete a contract, the subcontractor's employees are included when counting the total number of employees to assess when coverage is required.
And that's more a matter of timing of when we need to bring that coverage on than anything else. Especially
Usually the
seasonal
policy
nature
runs
of our
for
work.
a year, workers' comp runs for a year, and it's based on payroll. So if it's seasonal employees or part-time employees, it's usually based, it's at the end of the year, the company's required to do an audit, and that's when they catch everything. So you try to estimate the payroll, say you estimate the payroll of 30,000, and at the audit time it's 25,000, you'll get a credit. But say it's 40,000, so you'll have to pay the difference to the company.
If it were me, and I were in your shoes, I would have a bare minimum policy on, I would have it now.
Yeah.
I would exclude myself, but I would be willing to have a policy because, you know, I had a client who had an uninsured claim. It was literally between workers' comp policies. He was late getting papers to the new client, and he had some difficulty. That claim cost him over $170,000 out of pocket.
Your costs are probably minimal now. You just go ahead and get a policy, because you might hire somebody on Tuesday and forget to get one otherwise, and you have an accident.
Exactly.
And that's tied to the company, not to the facility.
It would be the company that hires the individuals to do the work. It would not be the facility. I mean, the facility is just essentially a tool to you, but, you know, the company, the LLC, would be the one responsible.
Thank you.
Scary.
I have 2 questions. So we are joining businesses, separate businesses, creating a new business together. So we are doing an LLC, we're split 50-50. Do you recommend, whenever it comes to a bank account, that, like, we're self-funding, so we're not putting a loan or anything. Whenever we do expenses and buy, you know, products, do you recommend like 2 signatures whenever we purchase something, or you just never know?
Right.
I mean, I love.
Right, I mean, that, you know.
You don't know, but I love my family.
Well, yeah, that's just on a per issue basis. You know, generally, you know, small businesses have 1 signer, but, you know, when you're talking about unrelated parties as owners and different, you know, different characteristics, you know, maybe one of you's traveling, maybe one of you's responsible for, you know, something a lot different than the other. I know you have 2 different types of businesses, but it won't hurt you to have 2 signatures. You know, it may become inconvenient at times, but it will not hurt you.
Okay. And then the second question, I've just been reading a ton about sales tax. You know, we do 5.3, but I was reading, and I'm not sure if this will make sense. So we are doing baked goods, and I was reading that you can be at a lower state sales tax if you.
It's for home consumption. We're not like a sit down and eat. It's everything's to go.
There is a lower tax rate. Again, I'm not the sales tax person, but there is a lower rate of tax.
And then, again, so I think that we, yeah, I think that we, you know, we're eligible for that.
Yeah, so you have to just break out your sales at the end of the month and determine, you know, what was prepared, what was merchandise, what was
But then
non-prepared.
can the town come and charge you meals tax as well if you're not serving a meal? I
Yes.
guess
Yeah.
and still, even if it's just for home consumption.
Extra 7%.
Yeah. That's
State-
really hard on a cookie.
State requires it anyway, so what you're gonna need to do is you're gonna need to go onto www.tax.virginia.com.
and call that business number there, and they will help you out. Yes, you're going to be on the phone for a few hours, but they're going to help you out.
And you will be responsible to the team, so they have a form that you fill out.
Yes, yeah. I just make sure since it's not technically a meal, and it was still.
Yeah, it's consumer
When you give them all the information, you file, do all that, they're gonna give you a tax ID number,
Yeah, we have all that.
And then they'll have that, when you fill your ST9 out, that number, they're gonna automatically calculate how much tax you're gonna pay.
I just never, Damascus never told me about a meals tax, so I've never paid it for my bakery, and then they're like, oh yeah, this new one, yep, you're gonna have to, thankfully I don't have to go back and pay, because that was their bad, but I was like, this is all new to me, I was just paying the normal tax.
We're gonna pay it now, though.
Yes, we're gonna play the rules, right? Who knows it?
Yes, I had a question. Last week we talked about advertising. I was wanting to get your advice as for right now. I am working on the e-commerce website. Also am going to increase our signage at the shop. I talked to Jason Boswell at the town, and once I reach the max on that, we can use the windows, it's a nice vinyl window advertising. But it's every week. It seems like I have somebody come in, to the newspaper, the TV stations, the radio, or a phone call. Do you have any advice as far as advertising, or do you think I'm going in the right direction?
That's advertising, marketing. You really have to evaluate, what media you're using and what the audience is that it's reaching. Right. And, sometimes, there are no right answers. It's just try this and try that.
Exactly.
That's a tough question. There are some industry statistics that you can look at just to see, you're primarily retail.
Yeah.
What the average amount that small businesses in the X dollar sales range spend on marketing and advertising. But to me, I know when I do marketing, it's where's the money go? What type of marketing? Who am I trying to reach? And
right.
What's the best way to reach them? And then unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but sometimes your marketing is more community oriented, and you're just really doing it for a donation, but you get some marketing expense out of it.
In 2 weeks, we're gonna have Josh Mancuso, who is a marketing guru, and he can address a lot of that, like how do you judge what media is right for you and those types of things. And this guy's full of energy, so you all better excite yourself.
Okay. All right.
He'll be here.
Having said that, we do a lot of marketing, and you probably don't see a lot of CPA firms doing a lot of marketing.
Right.
But we've had 25 years of growth, so
Yeah.
I think it works.
It's working.
I think you're doing something right. Yeah, absolutely.
I will tell the people, like I said, this is my 3rd year, and I'll tell you the best thing that ever happened to me is, it was just by pure accident. I got the lady from Washington County News to come up and do a story on my pay label. And Bristol Herald Courier picked it up, got a full sheet on it. It was like you turned a light switch. So when you get your business opened up, you need to be calling the newspaper because people still read it. Also, the lady from Virginia's for Lovers. She coming this year?
No, Josh is gonna be doing that.
Oh, okay. Well, I got enrolled in that, and I got results off that too. So make sure when she comes. That's a good thing. But if you're just starting your business, that newspaper, I was flooded. I mean, it just turned a switch.
I agree. We had a write-up on a Monday in the newspaper in the Bristol on a Monday. And last week, that was, I guess, close to a year ago. And last week, I had somebody come in for the first time and say, I saw you in the newspaper. a year ago.
I get a lot of
So-
people,
Yep.
and I was surprised.
Yep.
We saw your article, you're thinking, whoa,
Yeah.
and that's a free way. But I was gonna say Facebook, I know, I mean, it's great.
Yeah, we're on, yeah.
But have you ever done their when you can boost your?
Yes.
I
Yes.
swear, and that's very affordable, and it picks
Well-
the market for you, your target market, friends of friends, friends who
Exactly.
like, I mean, it's
Exactly.
incredible how many
Exactly.
likes I get after I do a $30 post, I mean, $30.
Yeah.
And I'm getting, at least
Reaching so many-
$200, you
Reaching
know.
so many more people.
Yeah.
But
people
the
wanna-
only thing, you know, we carry buck knives and other types of knives, and we cannot advertise, they block us. I have to.
If you say the word or the picture.
If you have knife, or if they see a picture of that.
Because you're
totally blocked.
you're a independent contractor, basically. I do Avon separate, and I can't boost.
They won't.
If I boost, they
Yeah, so-
put you in
so-
jail.
So we've
Facebook
just,
jail.
we've just
You can't-
done away with saying anything about the buck knives, any kind of weapon.
Okay.
And,
I can't advertise I carry Rada, I don't know if y'all know, the Rada knives that are like amazing.
Yeah.
I can't advertise those. but
Right.
They're like the best product I have in
Okay,
my
I
store.
see, now it wouldn't work as well for you, sorry.
But Instagram,
No, you're fine.
Instagram is a lot, it's
Yeah.
changing the world from Facebook to Instagram.
See, I'm not even,
Facebook.
Instagram, I've got to do that.
One thing that I would also encourage everybody to take a look at, just for any business, just about any business that's out there, there's a trade group or a co-op or some sort of nonprofit coalition of like folks. Several years ago, I was at a bed and breakfast in Maine, and that guy was involved in a trade group that went around, and 15 beds and breakfasts from all over would lobby together to go and purchase mattresses at a deep discount or something like that, you know. But the real benefit that I've seen with the few ones that I've ever looked at is there's usually always some sort of, you know, some are hit and miss, but there's usually always some sort of like beginner's advice, or these are things that have been successful, this type of advertising for this type of business, or things like that.
Right.
You know, look for those. I think that those trade groups are usually, they have some basic information that's usually pretty helpful.
And I do have one quick follow-up. We have taken newspaper ads out in the Bristol Herald, and I have, in that ad, we are currently seeking comic collections in the area, and I've had several people come in with very nice comic collections, so the newspaper still does work. Even though we're steering more toward the social media, and I'm excited about getting that website up fairly soon. And we're on Facebook, and Connie's gonna help me with the Instagram, so I think we're moving in the right direction. But thanks.
Something I might recommend too, if you're carrying her products,
Yeah,
you guys should be
absolutely.
promoting each other.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, we will.
This is just kind of a general, for those of us starting out with a small business, what I'm thinking about doing is the food tastings and tours. Is there a certain accounting software, like a basic beginner kind of thing that you would recommend?
There is, and the most prevalent software right now is what's called QuickBooks Online. It's hosted in the cloud, and they have several different versions. I think they have a self-employed version that costs maybe $10 a month, and then they have I think Essentials is their entry level dual entry accounting package. It's maybe $25 a month, but very easy to learn. You can do your billing. Well, you probably won't have billing, but you can keep track of your customers on it, and you can get the app, and when you make purchases in cash or anything, really, you can scan the invoices right into QuickBooks. It's pretty slick.
I don't know if this would be in your realm either, but I had heard that PayPal is not as trusted as a source for people to, I mean, like I sell things on eBay, I just use PayPal, but I thought I'd read that it's, how do you decide like which, what's the word, money?
Right.
Point of sales?
There you go. POS system to use. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure that does PayPal have a point of sale. I know a lot of people would use
Yeah.
Square.
Yeah.
Uh,
I use Square.
But you just have to look at each one, and and evaluate it for how you're gonna be using it, you know. How intuitive is it gonna be? Is it something you're gonna be carrying with you on your tours, and, you know, you need an iPad, and you know, you wanna also be able to set up your sales categories, which, you know, is really not, at the end of the day, all you might think you care about is money, but you really wanna know what sources of revenue are driving your business. So, you know, whether it's street tours or whatever different types of tours you're gonna do, you know, you want that revenue category, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, a lot of small businesses and startup businesses will use Square, and it works, and you can sync it to QuickBooks.
QuickBooks actually has their own, I just got it this past week, their own card reader that's integrated with it, and it's worked out really well.
The reviews, though, I've been reading up on that. Sometimes it's taken longer for the QuickBooks invoices and stuff. You know, Square, you can actually make the invoices. That's how I do most of my business, is I email it to them, ask for 50% up front, and after I complete the gig, they pay me the other 50% on spot. That's also in the contract. But the QuickBooks, they say it's having trouble, like, not depositing, like it is depositing, but it's not depositing as quick. So Square's like overnight, it's taking sometimes 3 to 4 days, so.
You also have to look at your fees.
I have a tour company back in California, and it's if you put them on a different platform because you want people to pay in advance via your website. And so there are tour company platforms. The one I use is called Peak, P-E-E-K. Although if I were to redo it now, I would do Bocum, which is through TripAdvisor. So TripAdvisor just bought them, and now they're you can get signed up through them, and they will walk you through the whole process. And so that's because TripAdvisor is going to be your main driver. I think it makes sense to sync up with them straight away. So that would be my recommendation. And then they will give you, they have their own internal credit card processing, but then you can have an app on your phone. So let's say someone just decides to join the tour that day, you can, have a little plug-in on your phone, and it goes through your reservation system and will go through that. So the trip platforms usually have their own internal credit card processing. The wineries have different deals with Square, but that's because everything's on the site. So if you're doing like advanced reservations, probably go for a tour platform.
And if you have a very small business, we've used Quicken for our farm accounts, mainly because you could integrate, like, it was one of the few products that you could integrate your home accounts and your, like, Quicken Home and small business. And that's one of the limitations of QuickBooks, is you can't do that, but it has pros and cons. But that was a big differential, was when we were running our very small business, we wanted, if you're gonna do your business accounting, you're gonna wanna do your personal stuff with the same structure. That was cumbersome to not be able to jointly manage those.
That's what their self-employed version sort of lets you do. There's no reconciliation point, which is what the business packages make you do. So it's more wide open. You only get what you put into the system.
John, I've got a question for you and Brian. In a retail business like mine, and I think Brian and I have discussed this once or twice, but I have a lot of tangible, heavy machinery, and some of them, may be demoed on basis. Somebody might get them over and drive around the parking lot. Is there anything, insurance-wise or on the legal side of things, people tripping, falling? I'm kind of chicken little in some ways, just always trying to think ahead. Is there anything you could do? Obviously I don't want everybody that comes in, I don't want to stick a waiver in their face and say, if you get on a mower, you're going to have to sign one of these because I'll run everybody off. So Do you have any advice?
Well, I think it's kind of going about it in the backward sense, but if you don't have security cameras on the property, you might want to have them.
I've got a security system, I just don't have any cameras.
Yeah. The reason why I say that is, you know, for instance, with slip and fall, the defect has to be known in advance to you, and you have to have ignored it.
Right.
So, you know, if you're on your lot, you're on your property, you're going over your property daily, and you run into those situations and you repair them, you know, and you know about it, and you repair them, typically you're okay.
Okay.
You know, but, you know, we've had situations where stores have had people claim to have slipped and fallen in spilled milk or something like that, and you go back and look at the security cameras and there's no such thing, just, you know, so, you know, those are just, you know, you hate to think about it, but somebody's already said it's a sue world.
Sure, yeah.
You know, and things like that are, you know, if you've got a lot of pedestrian traffic, you know, you can't keep your eyes on everything. So that's one recommendation I would have. Because if you're doing what you're trying to do, taking care of your shop, taking care of your premises on a regular basis, you really can't do any more by yourself. So something like security cameras, you know, you're looking over, you're taking care of your property, you know. As far as people getting on and actually demoing a mower, I still would stick the release in their face then. You know, once you get to that point where the engine cranks, I would have a sign released.
What if no one else is doing that? I don't want to be the only guy
Well,
around. I mean, you know.
You know, that's you know, cost risk analysis. You know, are you going to run off people? Then, you know, how likely is somebody to get hurt on a lawnmower? On a, you know, if you have like a flat area.
It would just be a parking lot.
Yeah.
If I were riding around in this room.
You know, chances are probably pretty unlikely, but again, like we were talking earlier, you know, with Stephanie, you know, one hit, one
Sure.
deductible
Oh,
on
yeah,
your
well,
insurance.
that's, you know, that's the thing, is that, you know, one hit like that and I'm done. So
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah. You know, and that's, unfortunately, there's no easy answer
Sure.
with that. You just kind of have to measure the risk.
right.
Cost benefit analysis.
Yeah.
I feel like if you were serving the right people, they would appreciate that you're taking the step to protect yourself. You know?
Right.
Like, I feel like the ones that throw a fit about doing something like that are the ones that are like maybe trying to do something. You know?
Well, and that's true to some extent, but
Yeah.
if you're the only person that's doing it, well, out of.
But is that the case? Do you know that? I mean, is
Oh, yeah,
that?
yeah, no one, I mean, you can go to Lowe's or any of the outdoor equipment guys and hop on them over and take off on it.
Because they got the money.
Yeah.
No, nobody's
They're
gonna
old enough
make
that-
you sign a waiver.
You just say you're small.
It's just not a.
What? And you know, you're right to the side of the road, real close, and it's not in a fenced-in area.
Right.
You could
Two,
use
you
that.
could get somebody on a zero turn, who's never been on it before.
Yeah.
Hey, my friend is turned 90 this year, and bought a new John Deere, a zero turn.
I don't think I'd let her on a mower anyway.
But I don't care, you never know who.
I know, and
experience.
that's why I asked, because, you know, Lowe's can absorb it, Meat Tractor can absorb it, I can't absorb it, you know, one hit like that, and so that's the things that I'm trying to proactively think about.
And you may want to take a look at your insurance, because I would.
Brian and I have talked about it before, I just, there again, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate and trying to think of certain situations that could put me in that do or die, you know.
Well, and I would think that there would be some insurance policies that understand that someone who's in the business of selling lawn tractors is going to have to put a customer on that lawn tractor, you know, so if something in the ordinary happens, then, you know, that's probably going to be a covered risk, right? I mean,
Is that
but
not in the ordinary course of selling lawnmowers?
right, but then, you know, you never know, and that's the thing. I would make sure that I have a good understanding of what my policy, my business coverage allows.
I mean, it's kind of like, just ask the question, have you ever been on a zero-turn lawnmower?
Sure.
If you haven't been on a zero-turn, you might not want
Yeah, let's go out back and drive it.
Yeah, sort of like, I hate to tell a story about my dad, but had a zero-turn lawnmower, took it out to his house. He said, let me try that thing out. So he's going around and he's like, get me off this dang thing.
Well, it's not only that. I mean, if you're doing anything like waivers, my first job I was working with an inflatable business. And the thing is, if somebody had like a broke arm, you couldn't let that child on there without parental consent with a waiver. And it's the same thing there. I mean, it's your equipment. You own it until they purchase it. So what you do is, I mean, if you cover that up with a friendship with your customer or client, they're going to understand. You know, just basically you build that friendship between them, and it's going to be like any farm company. People's going to keep coming back. The better friendship you build, the
Oh,
better.
yeah, I understand, but everybody coming in, you know, the biggest portion of them, you know, there'll be a lot of folks that I do know, but there's going to be a vast majority of them.
Well, I mean,
that
it's
don't.
like a car lot too. Those people coming in there, it's going to keep the I hate to be like this, but riffraff off your lot.
Yeah.
It's going to divide the people who's serious about purchasing one and the people who's not serious about purchasing one.
I would
It's gonna
definitely be
divide
out
those up.
there with the, I'm sure you'd be out
Yeah.
there with the person trying to.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because
I'm
you could
just-
be like turning off the power.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or trying to,
Well, it's just like I say, no one else is doing it, and I've been in the industry my whole life, and if I'm the single guy that starts acquiring a waiver, I'm telling you, it's
Yeah.
not, it will run people off. I've been in
So if you
business
sign
long
a
enough
waiver
to-
releasing you, if they run the mower into someone else's car and they damage not only someone's vehicle
Yeah.
and your mower, does that waiver, has that released them for any responsibility they would have for damages to his equipment?
Probably not.
Okay.
The waivers are typically more or less for his negligence in allowing them to be on that. You know, you warn them, look, this is a zero-turn mower, it can be risky, this is the situation, you know, despite the fact that this is risky, you want to try it out. They sign and say, yeah, I do. But, you know, you probably still are responsible as a business owner if your customer demoing your mower runs into somebody's parked Cadillac. You know, you probably still, they may also have a little bit of responsibility because they damaged but the thing about it is, you and the customer are going to be sued, and you're the one with business coverage, you know? And it occurred to me, and I don't know, but there may be some provisions in the statute regarding liability when an auto owner or an auto sales or a tractor sales, or, you know, somebody in the business of selling equipment like that.
Right.
Who customarily allows somebody to demonstrate the equipment. There may be some statutes that carve out liability exceptions there. I don't know. I just wrote it down as a note. I'll try to check with some of my friends who do that, because like you said, nobody's signing them. There's got to be a reason why they're not signing them.
It's like a car lot. I mean, I never saw them when I just drive a car.
Well, you know, I thought I just bought a new car
So you're
back in
insurance-
December, and I did sign a waiver
Did
when
you?
we test drove it.
some places you get to sign the waiver, and some places for buying a car.
Well, that's like 20 years ago. I mean, you used to be able to go and just hand them your license, they make a little copy, and you get in the car and you drive it off the lot. Nowadays, they get in the car with you and they ride around with you, and a lot of times it makes clients uncomfortable, but I mean, like I said, it's your property.
Mike, the other question for you, just fairly generic, but with someone that has a lot of inventory coming in and out, lots of stuff moving, floor plans, and not even necessarily that kind of a business, but where do you see new businesses within the first year? A lot of them fail, not necessarily fail completely or go bankrupt, but where do you see businesses, entry-level businesses, lacking in their bookkeeping / money?
Well, you know, the big thing, you know, I think as part of your business plan, you need to look at at your break-even point. You know, what's it gonna take in sales for me to break even on my expenses, on my fixed and variable expenses? So you really have to do an analysis of profit margins by product line and fixed costs and understanding what your variable costs are. You know, I think there are a lot of businesses that start, and, you know, quite honestly, I think to myself, you know, they're gonna have to sell 6,000 widgets a day in the town of Abingdon.
Sure.
How do they plan on doing that?
Right.
So, you know, first of all, just cash flow, just being undercapitalized. You know, you mentioned accounting. You know, unfortunately, you know, a lot of businesses don't see a lot of value in accounting. They see it as something that you should do, that you can get behind on and catch up sometime later in the year, and then at some point in time have your taxes done. Well, you know, my experience, and like I said, 35 years, has been that the people who spend money to retain competent professionals, and I'm not just trying to say something here, are the ones who are most successful. Right. Because they're getting, whether it's legal, accounting, insurance, or just a consultant in your field, getting good advice and you know, learning the best practices for what you do. Those are the people that are most successful. You know, from the standpoint of accounting, you know, accounting can be used as a management tool, and it should be used as a management tool. So, you know, you shouldn't look at it as you know, after the fact historical accounting. You can use it as a proactive management tool going forward.
Well, the reason.
But undercapitalization, maybe, you know, I would say marketing. Marketing is a very important aspect of any startup business. You've got to get the word out, because you got to drive those sales, and you know, your first year budgets should have a good marketing plan to go with it.
Well, that's what's, you know, with the few people that are there at Turf Pros right now. I'm extremely OCD, and I've been working on this thing for a long time, and it still just, it blows my mind at the amount of moving parts.
Yeah, because you have inventory, you have floor plan, you have contracts.
Yeah, I mean, it's like every time you get something finished, you're thinking of something, and it's just constantly moving around, and you're always feeling like you're just spinning your wheels. And so, you know, that's the part of it that I've yet to kind of get the, I don't know, that was the part of it that I wanted to find out, was where you saw guys fail.
Anybody in like a dealer finance type business like you're in on the equipment side, you know, you got a lot of moving parts, as you said. And, you know, trying to figure out where you are at any given time can be a puzzle if you don't have the proper systems in to capture all that information and recognize it.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question regarding the dynamics of pros and cons of segregating different business enterprises. For example, one of our main goals is to stimulate the orchard and apple growth and apple production. And it is, looking at the cost benefit, it's to our interest to likely plant apple orchards of ourselves, of our own, to get a better price on our apples, at least for specialty varieties that we have particular interest in. And so we've got some options as far as we could either do that as part of our cider making business, or form a separate LLC, you know, for a few $100s, and try to separate that out. Of course, that has tax dynamics and liability insurance, trying to duplicate things. At what point, or what kind of decision points, if y'all could just talk a little bit about how y'all would make that decision of when it's best to incorporate that in the existing structure versus splitting that out?
Well, you know, I think you already got to start on it, because you said that you segregated the real estate aspect of your business from the operating aspect. And, you know, having been involved in some breweries myself, you know, I understand also that you may have some intellectual property, some recipes and things like that, that you may want to separate out. You know, there can be tax issues and tax benefits, as well as costs, that go along with splitting out any particular aspect of your business. And there are also liability issues and asset protection reasons to do things like that. the real estate being separated is, that's probably in our world, it's a gimme. You always try to separate the liabilities of your operating business from assets, as much as you can. So, generally at the end of the day, if you're just moving money across entities, it's all going to fall to the bottom line. It's just a question of where. Now, in tax, you can have different implications of how that loss or profit is looked at at each entity level. For example, in your LLC, your profits are subject to self-employment tax, which means you pay a 15.3% self-employment tax on profits. But you can use your real estate entity to basically create deductions against your self-employment income and move that income into the rental operation, whose profits are not subject to self-employment tax. Then you look at things like, intellectual property, moving your recipes, your trademarks, all of that kind of stuff into another entity that you can pay royalties to that, again, do not incur self-employment taxes. So, there's, at the end of the day, it all may be taxed as a profit or loss in some ways, but there could be some tax implications to the nature of the income from a tax perspective.
One thing that I would add to what Mike said, you can have a holding company, LLC, and the subsidiary LLCs, they're not subsidiaries, but they can be members in that holding company, LLC. One thing, that you may want to do, whenever I set up a business for someone, the first thing I tell them is, what does your accountant tell you need personally? Once you've solved that, then you can pretty much structure your legal entity any way you need to. But looking ahead, at where you want to be, what you think you're going to do, consider whether or not the assets in any particular LLC are something that you may want to sell wholesale. Do I want to just sell my interest in this LLC that owns the orchard? Or for instance, is all of the equipment held in one LLC? Then you've got things like depreciation issues that your accountant would want to reconcile all together. But is it going to be advantageous at some point to sell that LLC with all of the equipment in it, as opposed to selling the pieces and parts of the equipment separately? Those are things, once you get the basic operating model, you get your basic cash flow coming and going, then you can structure your company, for future movement. That's one thing I always tell folks to consider. A lot of times we'll have, holding LLC and then member LLCs. And remember, with LLCs, a member LLC can be a member with individuals. So, those are the considerations.
That was one aspect. If we have the same 4 members in the same, in a different LLC, does that really give any separation legally?
Sure. No, it does.
Okay.
It does. Again, as long as you operate each of those, don't merge them, don't have commingled bank accounts, and don't pretend that they're all one LLC. When you have this LLC, remember the mission of that LLC. And a lot of times what like I know professionals, various like accountants and lawyers and things like that, their company is one company. The building that they own or rent is another company. They own that separately. Different members of the same company may be taking on different membership roles. You may be the managing member of this LLC. You may be the managing member of this LLC. You're all the same level of ownership. You just take on different roles. So yeah, you can still do that.
Just know, you already mentioned the B corporation, that thing that none of us know what it is. But if it's truly a nonprofit, just understand that if you start building value in that entity, you lose the ability to profit from that value. In other words, it's gone to the community or whoever's going to benefit from it. So, once you start, if you put your apple orchard in that, in the farm in there, that if you ever decide to get out of that business, you have to give it to another nonprofit. And, I don't know how big you want to get, if your plan is to grow and, hopefully one day be bought out by one of the international brewers. But, from here, you're gonna go probably into distribution, okay? And then you may have a truck or two, then all of a sudden you may say, well, I need a distribution company to handle all my distribution. And then when you get to that point, you're gonna say, well, I need vehicles. I want my vehicles in a different company to shelter that liability. So as you grow, you're gonna run into these different opportunities and these different issues that are gonna cause you to start to think more and more about liability. And really ease of business use, different types of profit drivers and revenue drivers sometimes make you start new entities.
And I don't want to cut you off on an answer, but on the nonprofit, as far as I know, to give an incentive on the fundraising side, you'd have to be a 403B to give the tax charity benefit to the donor versus an investor, traditional investor in a business would not get that. I don't think the B corporation would that wouldn't give any benefit to the donor different than.
I mean, I'm not sure I'm picking up on your question, but if you're talking about your contribution to the B corporation.
Right, so say we're soliciting investors, and if we were not-for-profit, we could give them a tax write-off as a charitable contribution as compared to an investment. That I don't think the B corporation
I'm not sure. Generally, if they're making an unrestricted gift and not getting anything in return, but I think a lot of times with these B corporations, I've got to imagine that the people who contribute funds are going to be benefiting from some line of business or some opportunity on the other side. That would be a reason why they would not get a donation.
And for the insurance, I mean, there are certain type businesses that usually, like a contractor, they'll need liability, need workers' comp, they need all this. If there's several moving parts, sometimes it's best. We have loss control for certain companies that we can schedule a time for them to come out and look at the business, talk to you all, and then try to assess the whole thing to make sure we have everything, we know what's going on, we know how to properly insure it. There's a lot of moving parts, but I'm sure it can be done. It's just making sure everybody's on the same page.
So I get a lot of requests for donations through my business in the local shop. How would you suggest the best way to keep track, or the best way to, you said the people that were not prepared tax-wise.
Right.
That's like a big arrow right here to me in the
Right.
corner, because I still don't know what I'm doing.
So-
But I just need, basically what I'm asking is, like, a lot of the donations that they ask for, I will tell them, I can't, where I'm so small and still new, I can't straight out give, but I don't have a problem with giving at my cost. So sometimes I will do a straight out give, but sometimes I will do just at my cost. Like, is there a certain way that I need to record those differently?
Right. Now, generally, what's happening, your gift baskets, right?
Gift baskets.
So just think about it from the standpoint that when you buy the material that you're putting into your gift basket, you're probably not you shouldn't have to calculate your inventory at the year end for your tax person. You can write it all off as you purchase it. So once you write it off, once you get that deduction for the items that you purchase, the IRS is not going to let you double dip and get another deduction for the fact that you gave it away. Okay, so you can keep track of what you're doing. There is a rule within the regulations that says that when you donate inventory, that you can get half the difference between the retail value and your cost as an additional charitable donation. So, what you would want to do is just go ahead and invoice it like you normally would, and have your recipient sign off that they received it, and then they should be able to give you a donation receipt back for whatever the full value is. And then at the end of the year, you sort of have to give that to your tax preparer, or at least calculate, here's what I gave, here was the retail cost of it, here was the wholesale cost of, my cost of it, here's the retail value, calculate 50%, that should be your additional dose.
Going off of Cassie, I'm dealing with that too. I get a lot of, with my business, because I can donate a service. I'm not donating a product. And so it's easier, and I love to help. And I get a lot of schools and preschools and churches and asking for donations for gift fundraisers they're doing. So I'm giving out vouchers like crazy, and I don't mind to. I'm not keeping track of anything. I don't know what I'm doing. What can I do? I'm just giving away.
I don't have any good news for you because you don't
That's
get a
what I'm
deduction
doing?
for it.
Okay, that's fine.
You don't
Because
get a
that's what we're
deduction for
talking
blood,
about, so I
sweat,
don't-
tears, or hair.
So there's no, I mean, because there's just it's admission,
giving them
free
an
admission, which I
opportunity.
love that I can do that. But I didn't know if I needed to be keeping track of anything.
Just get them to sign the waiver.
I know. I'll start doing that again.
Okay, so I actually have another question, since I've already given myself away that I don't know what I'm doing.
None of us do.
Where should I start? This weekend will be 1 year that I'm in business, and I have a filing cabinet that has months with every single receipt that I've bought anything.
Okay.
And
How are you organized? Are you an LLC?
Sole proprietor.
Sole proprietor, okay. Have a business account?
Yes.
Rule one is you should have a business account that you run all your transactions through. Because that's gonna be your reconciliation point, as I mentioned before. And what I mean is, at the end of the day, you know, I can take your checkbook and basically run all your deposits and expenses. And when I total them all up, the difference should be the change in cash in your checking account during the year. Okay, and I'd have to take into account, you know, your note payments or your capital contributions and your sales and all your expenses. But at the end of the day, I know if I get to that change in cash for the year, that I've got the right answer. So when you start working backwards from receipts and invoices, then it makes it hard, especially if you paid a lot of things in cash. You haven't kept records. So your checks, your bank statements and your bank account's gonna be the initial source. And then I would say go through all your invoices and figure out what you paid in cash. And by the way, when you pay an invoice, you should write your check number and the date and the amount that you paid. And if you have more than one checking account, you say, I paid it out of Highland Junior Bank account. If you paid something in cash, then appropriately note it. But I would take all your invoices that you paid with cash and categorize them by, you know, with the amounts that you paid so that you can come up with that total for your tax preparer.
So on things, I don't actually have someone specifically that I'm working with as far as that goes, but I have called a couple places and asked a couple questions, things like that. When I first started, a lot of the things that I have in my shop as far as like my retail counter, my shelving, you know, things like that, I just found, like, you know, some of it was my personal stuff, some I, you know, maybe bought off the yard sale page or something, and so I don't really have record of that. However, the people that I've talked to said that they need to know that type of stuff. Is there a way to, I mean, one of them told me that I need to go back and find the people that I bought it from and ask them about it, so there's no way, you know, a year ago that I could find these people, but is there a way for me to expense that out or have some
Yeah,
sort
I
of
mean, you should
something?
make a list of everything that you donated to your business, that you contributed as part of your capital. And, you know, those are real issues. You know, I put in this bookshelf that I've had for 5 years, still listed. You don't know what it cost, but at the end of the day, you know, you can be totally correct, and you can go back and find a person that, you know, that you bought it from, or they died, and you can go find their granddaughter or whatever. But, you know, at the end of the day, you just want to be real, and you want to be conservative about what you do, and you know, we try to be real. So, you know, if you say you bought that bookshelf from somebody, and it's a standard wooden bookshelf, and you say, well, it was $2,000. You say, yeah, you know, looks like a $50 bookshelf to me. Let's be real about it, and you know, let's hope the IRS doesn't come looking, and if they do, we've done the best we can to come up with the number. And they're gonna do the same thing, well, that's realistic, or, well, that's not, and if they don't like it, they'll just deny the deduction.
So basically, if I present a list of, you know, this, and this, and I think I paid, you know, this much for it, then they're gonna be able to accept that and say, you know, this is probably part of.
They should be.
Sorry.
Got another one if no one else is gonna pop up? All right, I'll go for it. This one's, we've got a lot of people who are in food product industry, and so I think this is human to a lot of us. And this is about food liability and product liability concerns and how to manage that kind of risk. The one step, you know, whether it's regulated as produce or as food under 21 CFR 110 or 112 or under FSMA rules under 117, one of the first steps we can do is to make sure we're all complying with all of those food regulations, whether it's Department of Health or FeedX or whoever. But once we, and I'm assuming that would take care of some of the like criminal liability or that sort of thing. You know, step one is do the right thing. But beyond that, how can we manage, or what's the best vehicle to manage that product risk? You know, if I've got a widget or a cookie or a bottle of cider that is $10, is there a scalable risk liability to that on sizing your insurance or on having cash reserves to manage that, or if you have to go through a food recall? If y'all could talk a little bit on some good strategies to address that.
One of the problems that I think you run into when you sell food items, there really isn't a related risk to it. You know, so for instance, if you sell cider that is somehow not yours, for instance, I don't know if you carry other lines, but you know, if you sell a food item that you've purchased and you're turning it around in your facility, and it happens to be tainted, you know, there are various risks that go with that, but they're largely dependent upon how badly the tainted food damages somebody. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, for instance, I know someone who purchased, I can't remember, it was an herb, I can't remember the specific herb, but from a local grocery store, and it turned out that there had been a national recall, and so in the meantime, their spouse ended up becoming really sick as a result of having used the food. So the company knew that there was a recall, the person was injured, and so the question was, you know, what did they suffer? And then it becomes a personal injury equation. You know, if you have the duty of care, and that duty of care is breached by something you've done, then that creates a liability. Then if you have the liability issues, the question then is damages. You know, how badly was somebody damaged because of my breach of the duty of care? So there really isn't, you know, a $10 bottle of cider could be, you know, twice as damaging as a, you know, $50 steak. You know, so those are the things. But it all goes back to what is your duty of care, and that's where I think, you know, you talk about the various, you know, regulations that address food handling, food distribution, food things like that. I think you have to be very vigilant about that. You have to keep records to show that you're very vigilant about monitoring your product, because if you don't, somebody comes in and says, I bought this from you and it, you know, it ate a hole through my esophagus. You know, if that was scientifically possible, then the question becomes, did they really buy it from you? Did they get it somewhere down the road? You know, and if your records demonstrate that you go through, a good friend of mine was formerly a plant manager for a large dairy years ago, but he said that they were required by company protocol, by FDA, and by some other industry the 3 highest level managers had to sample taste with the little ice cream dippers, every product they produced that day. So from yogurt to sour cream to buttermilk to, and then they had to segment and store their product. And I'm not saying that's what you have to do.
We're willing to do some.
That's what lawyers are very good at that. But what I'm saying is there's an acceptable standard for you and your industry. Know that, practice it, keep your records.
Right.
That's really the most important thing for anybody that does that. Whatever your industry is, whatever your sales, there's an acceptable standard. Know it, practice it, document it.
Yeah, document it. And I don't know what's the expiration date of like cider?
It gets better with age.
All right, I mean,
As long as it's been packaged appropriately, you exclude atmosphere, you have an opaque glass that prevents skunking from light. It really does. It's in aging, it's more like a wine. It gets better with age.
I guess if you made that, I think we come across like a juice, a company making juice, and they had like nuts inside the area, so you had to a warning label on there. It's like made with, to protect your. I mean, always got to protect yourself. The more documentation, the better off you are. But say if you buy grapes and there's an expiration on grapes, you got to make sure that you have everything. Sort of like that bar rescue that show that's on TV. They the worst thing, they always go to these back in the kitchen and they don't have anything documented. It's like, how long has this been? And there's mold growing, and it's like, you should have this documented. This was prepared on such and such date. I mean, the more documentation you have, the better off you are. And I hope that helps. But like I said, I mean, we come across somebody making juice, but they had nuts in there, so you had to have a label for food allergies, per se.
I have a question about documentation. Signage. I'm adding signs every day. I'm learning that you have to have a sign or no one will abide by. Of course, we have our standard rules, but now it's little signs everywhere. Does that hold in court? There was a sign that told you not to do that, or told you to not have your 2-year-old sit in the middle of this thing that's for 5-year-olds and put things in their mouth and blah, 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 blah.
Take a photo of it showing when you put the sign up.
A photo of the sign?
Yeah, what that goes to, and again, this isn't particularly the area that I practice in, but in Virginia law, there's a concept called assumption of risk. So if somebody knows about the risk, and they've been warned about it, and they do it anyway, it's not your breach of duty, it's theirs. So they have taken it upon themselves to do exactly what the sign tells them not to, and then the injury occurs, that typically is going to prevent you from being the one that's responsible, okay? But again, that's one of those things you have to be ever vigilant, constantly have those, don't let anything in your business sit, but those are they can be very useful, they can be very helpful. Yeah. Think about it, if you're presenting a situation to a jury of like-minded people, and the first thing you say is, this sign that I had photographed was present, and they had to walk past it to get to the place where, to get to the restricted area for children of ages 7 and above. Nothing's foolproof and there's no guarantee, but those are, if you apply enough protections across the board here and there.
Jerry's signs, I'm keeping them in business along with everybody else, but it's like every day, can you make me this 3-inch sign that says something ridiculous? But I'm learning that you have to do it or they won't, and then the parents, the adults are the worst.
Warning label.
Yeah, there's your sign, or whatever.
There's specific industry signs as well, say like this is an equine activity area, and there's specific bits in the.
I'll take pictures.
I mean, there's a
Or,
reason.
I think we have some agritourism.
There's like
folks in
caution,
here.
hot coffee.
Oh,
You
I-
see steam coming off
But
coffee, you
there's
know
a
it's gonna
reason
be
why
hot.
it says it. I mean, I used to joke, but I get it now.
There's
I mean, I get it. If there's about, really? All about the woman? Yeah.
That's actually an interesting story, because they actually did superheat the coffee. The coffee is like not normal. They make it extra hot so it would stay. So it's actually not the woman's fault. It was like bad.
They superheated it,
They did.
overheated it.
It's an interesting one.
But I just wondered, because you're talking about that, and I'm learning that I'm putting signs everywhere.
All the infomercials where she drops everything she's trying to do. I'm just saying.
I mean, I was in a continuing education class, and I'm like, are you serious? This guy bought a motorhome, was driving down the road, got out of the driver's seat, went to go make a cup of coffee. It crashes. He survives, has a great attorney, and he sued the dealership because the dealership did not tell him it did not have automatic pilot. That's the reason you see these labels, these cautions. I mean, I hate to say that, but
So does that hold true with like wet floor signs and things like that? My shop is like this big, tiny, and so when it rains and stuff, I'll hang something on the door that says, please watch your step on our wet floor. Snow, rain, anything, I mean, somebody spilled their drink, anything, I'll put that up just to be safe. I mean, will that hold true? Because clearly they had to have seen it because it's this big and this door is this big, you know?
Yeah.
They saw it when they came in.
Again, it helps, and you're in a much better situation having put the sign out and having them fall than if you had not put the sign out and they fall. You know, I mean, and I'm not trying to be flippant, but yes, I would do that because, you know, again, nothing's foolproof, but you're taking all the reasonable steps that you're taking the steps that a reasonable person in your situation would take. You know, you're warning your patrons. You have to have patrons, so you're telling them this is a situation. You know, if it becomes gross negligence, like, you know, the floor grows mold and you do nothing to change it, you could be looking at a different set of circumstances. But, you know, if you're trying to take those steps and you're trying to protect the public, then that's going to be very helpful.
What about a not responsible for injuries sign?
It's not
Does
your,
that not work?
unfortunately, that's going to be one of those situations where you can say that, but the
Mhm.
law, the court's going to be the one to determine whether you are.
Yeah.
You know,
Might limit the likelihood of someone attempting to bring it to court, but does it help you actually in court?
yeah.
Well, I mean, what comes to mind with me is those car washes. You know, I'm scared to death of the, like, automatic car washes. Mirrors fly off of them things every day. And, you know, they have a little sign about this big that says, not responsible for personal property damage. And, you know, I mean, it's not gonna stop them from going to court, but it is gonna help their back a little bit.
And there's certain things like that, and again, it's not my area special, but you know, if the risk is well known and you know that driving through an automatic car wash, you know, the pieces and parts of your vehicle that are on the outside are likely to get damaged, you know, the court's not going to be as receptive to you saying, I didn't know. You know, but just disavowing your own liability is not, you know, the court's going to be the one to tell you whether or not.
You know, you
had-
go in the gas stations and stuff and you see those signs.
Yeah,
not
you
responsible
do,
for that.
but, you know, that doesn't necessarily determine the day.
Yeah.
How about a slippery when wet sign that's up all the time, so if they're, I mean, you never know when somebody's gonna be in your business and they're gonna spill something, then they might not tell you, you might not realize it's there. So if you just kept a sign up all the time that says slippery when wet or something, would that be a?
I mean, I think it's helpful, but, you know, what happens if you have the customer who comes in every day of the year, even in August when everything in the mountains, you know, turns to dust, you know, and they see that, you know, does it really prove to be a warning to them? You know, maybe not, but I think it's better, again, it's better than not not putting the notice out there, you
What's
know.
the same principle of using a step? Watch your step. Because if there's a step there, you're telling them to watch your step.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, you know, I think about a swimming pool or a restroom at a fitness center that somebody could go in and the owner may not know that someone has spilled something in the floor if you just had something up all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could help, but I mean, you know, when you get into the whole duty of care analysis, you know, what does a reasonable person in that position, you know, what does the court infer that a reasonable person in that position should do to protect the public? And you know, leaving a sign there may not be considered as much protecting the public as it is protecting you. You know, your duty is to the public because you're asking them to come in and patronize your company. So you want to make sure that they can come in, do business with you and leave safely. That's the you know, that's the duty that you want to extend to them. So, you know, if you don't do what a reasonable person would do to protect them, then arguably you could be, you know, you could have breached your duty of care to those folks. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you could say that, and I think that the court may want to know a good explanation why, you know, Sally Smith ignored the sign or why it meant nothing to her and she slipped and got hurt. Why she thinks that's now your fault. But she may have a very good reason. She may have seen that sign 363 days of the year because she's been in there and it's been up wet and dry. You know, those are the kinds of things.
Sort of like in that, you might can answer this, like you go in these bathrooms and there's like where the employees have to initial each hour that they take the bathroom. That might be easier, or it might be able to help.
Documentation.
Yeah.
That somebody's been in there to check it at least.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes those are health department issues, but the health department makes the company do it to show that they're protecting the public. You know, and that's one of the concepts you have to remember. You know, you're going into business, so you're inviting the public to come to you. It's not just like you were sitting at your house in Damascus and somebody, you know, down on Weaver Pike got hurt. You know, you have made, you know, you have offered to them a reason to be in your facility or to be dealing with you. So you have a certain level of care that you have to extend to them in order to conduct your business. So, and it can be really frustrating and really complicated.
In our place that we're gonna have, in the very front, we're going to have like a retail space, and we're gonna have local vendors that are consigning items. So whenever it comes to our liability on these consigned items, like natural body products, or candles, or dog shampoo and conditioner, or dog treats, are we, you know, what is our liability on that, selling it?
You know, without doing specific research, it would be hard to say, but my thinking is that if you put it there and there's some tangential benefit to you, you know, forgive me, I always see consignment shops, but I never know exactly the business model. Is it that you take a percentage off the top?
Yeah, like we will have our own items that are resale.
Right.
And then there's also, we want to do like a lot of local vendors.
Okay.
So we get a percentage of that.
And I would think that from a liability standpoint, you're getting some profit from their product, so you share some of the liability.
So I guess, do we need to make sure that they are?
You need to make sure they're insured.
Yeah.
Sorry?
That the company that
insured
you're.
for their product.
Yeah, like
Yes.
their product that's in the, you're consigning, they have their own liability because.
And typically their things, do you have like a sales contract with them? Okay. In that sales contract, you probably want to have an indemnification clause, meaning that if you get hit for something that they put in your store, you know, the reality of it is you're gonna get sued, they're gonna get sued, you may lose money on it, they may lose money on it. But if the fault is theirs, it's their product, somebody ate their local honey and got very sick, and you didn't have anything to do with it other than set it in your store shelf, you know, then you could arguably ask them to indemnify you for any losses that you suffer. And like Brian said, you know, make sure that every time you have a standard period of time for them to produce their insurance documentation, to make sure that they have, you know, like in the construction trade, what will happen is a lot of times workers' comp coverage for a subcontractor may be the responsibility of the subcontractor, but like we were talking about, the general contractor can be the statutory employer, so they'll tell the subcontractor, A, this is what we're gonna pay you, B, you're gonna indemnify us for any losses, and C, you're gonna keep us as an added insured on your policy, and D, your policy expiration is gonna trigger notice to us too.
And ask for a certificate of insurance too.
Yeah.
And be additional insured on it.
Yeah.
What that means is if that policy cancels, you're going to get notice of that cancellation as well.
And that's just part of your cost of doing business with them. It may not be practical, it may be just like we talked about, you know, your cost benefit analysis. You know, are you gonna run off these folks and have them take their goods down the road? But on the other hand, you know, or do you wanna pay $3,500 for x-rays and medical expenses or something, you know, and you just have to kind of weigh it out.
It's sort of like, your workers' comp, getting back to that workers' comp question, let's say that I do the work for you. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but let's say I have my own workers' comp insurance.
Yeah.
Well, you, at the audit time, you would wanna get a copy of my insurance because you wouldn't be charged for me because I have my own insurance. Now, if I didn't have insurance, then of course you're gonna be paying for it.
Does that help at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have vendors in my shop, local vendors, and we have like a contract, I don't know if this even holds up, but in the contract it says that if anything were to happen, I direct the customer to them, that I'm not responsible for anything except taking the money for the product. Because I don't know what went in it, I mean, I have an idea of course, but I don't know what went in it, I don't know her process, I don't know anything of that, so that, I mean, I don't know, you know, so I put in there that if anything were to happen, because I have locally made soaps and lotions and things like that in my shop. If anything were to happen, you know, I just direct them straight to her, give them her business information, her everything, and, I mean, I don't know if that covers me or not, but that's what I put in there.
I mean, I think it helps, and it certainly, you know, helps keep you out of the loop. But here's the reality, you know, let's say, you know, Mike comes in and he buys a basket of soap to give to his family, you know, for whatever reason. So that's just something he wants to do. So he comes in, he buys that from you.
I'll get it ready for you.
And two of his family members break out in a terrible rash, something like that. I don't know, you know. But there's a failure to warn allegation. If Mike comes to you and you say, oh, go to soap manufacturer, he's gonna go to the soap manufacturer and he's gonna say, look, this happened. It's my contention that your soap caused this. I need you to pay me for my, you know, my family's emergency room bills, and I need you to pay me for pain and suffering, okay? And if soap manufacturer says, take a hike, Spiegler, I don't want anything to do with you, he's gonna come right back to you and say, okay, I went there and they told me to take a hike, now let's talk. So that's the problem you run into. I mean, it's not a bad practice, but again, it's not foolproof either.
Well, you just want to make sure that you have liability.
Exactly.
Because here's the thing, you're selling somebody else's product. Well, I hate to say it, it's a sue society out there. People's gonna look for some kind of way. So, I don't mean it that way, I'm just, but the thing is, let's say you don't have insurance. Well, they come to you and say, hey, well, you have to pay out of your pocket, your lawyer's fees and everything. what we always tell customers is, let's turn the claim in, let the insurance investigate it. If you're not if the insurance is not obligated to pay, they won't pay, but they'll defend you. So that's the biggest thing about liability is either if you have liability, then the insurance company should defend you.
Yeah.
If you don't have insurance, that's all on you. So it could be, what, $5,000 to $30,000, $40,000, depends on how.
Anybody who's had a trip to the emergency room lately, I mean, you know, one trip to the emergency room could, you know, but I think what you're doing is the right thing. You're asking questions about what if, and then, you know, you have to measure, you know, can I afford this, can I afford that? In my way of thinking, nobody that's doing business with the general public, nobody can avoid or not afford to have a certain measure of liability insurance. You know, one thing that happens in the legal field, you know, when somebody sues, they come after you, you know, they're going to go to court and they're going to file a complaint, and the complaint is going to allege all the facts that they say led to their injury. And one of the facts that they're going to have to allege is the amount of money that they claim they're owed. Okay, and that's made up by a couple of things: the amount of medical expenses they incurred, the whatever value they put on their pain and suffering, you know. But a lot of times what happens with an insurance claim when it kicks in, they may sue for $50,000. But the insurance company will come in and say, look, you know, she has a $25,000 policy. We're willing to pay that, but you have to let the rest of it go. And that's where a settlement is affected, and that's how insurance companies save you money in the end, is they manage to reduce your risk to a measure. And so, you know, knowing those, understanding what your risk may be, and then trying to insure against them really is the best thing you can do, because you know, you can't, anybody can see you any time for anything, but the reality of it is, are they going to win that lawsuit? And you know, you just have to know where you're likely to be successfully sued. I think I saw him.
So, a related question. You're talking about consumables. What about non-consumable consigned items? Like we consign fine art. Somebody comes in my shop, they buy an abstract painting. A month later, they come back in saying it's giving them nightmares. Where do we stand there?
It's a fine art.
I mean, it's all they got their money's worth. It's
Yeah, really. Isn't that what you wanted? I mean, I think.
Especially what I wanted, but it could have been what, you know, what they were, because some of the fine art that we consign is in the fantasy realm.
You know, and I think there's, and again, you're stretching my memory on liability, but at a certain point, it's a buyer beware situation. You know, if you sold them the product and the product does exactly what the product is supposed to do, you know, and they don't like it, that's not a liability. That may be a business decision to you whether or not you want to refund the money to keep a customer. But you know, that's a business decision. That's not so much a legal liability. You know, when you were going down that road, what I was thinking is, you know, you sell them a product and it turns out not to be by the artist they thought it was, or it's a fake or a fraud, or you know, something like that.
Oh no, we account for that problem.
Okay, but you get what I'm saying. That's something that you have represented to them that they're buying, you know, whatever, you know, hot abstract artist of the day they want to buy, and it turns out not to be that work, then you certainly have liability, because you know, but somebody who sold it to you has liability or consigned it. So, but you know, in terms of what you just said, you know, in my way of thinking, you know, that's just the decision they made. They bought exactly what they were looking at. You sold them exactly what they wanted. And
it's your refund policy.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Folks, I think think it's about time we wrap it up. We could be here till 10 o'clock at night. And this is always the way it happens. It starts out slow and then we have to kind of stop things. If you have any other lingering questions for our guests, send us an email and we'll share with you. I know you have something you want to follow up with it's one of them that you said you would follow up with, but send us any questions that we didn't get to tonight and we'll share and try to get you some answers. Now next week we'll be talking about credit and managing a business. C.D. Snyder with Virginia Community Capital will talk about credit and how you prepare, get your credit in line before you seek financing and some other things. One of the things that I'm sure you would agree with, cash is king and how you manage your cash for your business. I know when we look at loans, we see a lot of issues with regards to cash. And then Gary McGow, Gary has been involved in SCORE. He's managed different businesses, but he's going to talk about managing a business. See you next week. If you need the information, I'll send out an email with the link to get everything that goes on the flash drive to you. Any other lingering questions about the next 4 weeks?
I have a question. I was looking at the sample business plans. Do you want them in this particular format? Or if you go to the
It's just a sample, but keep in mind, we want to keep it under 20 pages.
Yeah.
And we need 3 copies.
And these don't have financial.
It's just a sample. I'm not sure what, I think Jennifer had put that together for you. If you need some other samples, we can share with you. There's a lot of things online. A great website is score.org that has some great samples of business plans, but doesn't have to be a Sears and Roebuck catalog. Tell us what you're going to be doing, how you want to manage it, market it, finance it, all those kind of things.
Okay, but this has no spreadsheets of financial projections or anything like that. But I would assume that you.
Yeah, I think that the folks that are going to be judging those would want to see that, because those are folks that are very senior in the lending industry, and they're not all just here. Some's outside of another state. So there's no lies, but that's some of the things that they checked off on the scorecard.
On the pitch night,
yep.
Are we pitching in front of our peers or in front
There's
of?
going to be a set of judges
Okay.
that are going to be sitting here, and your peers will be in the room.
They will be too?
Yes. And
Yeah, we can throw anything we want
So
to.
y'all just gonna be.
We don't even on the stage.
I know that's tough, but you will see as you continue with your business how important pitching your business not only to lenders but to customers, to suppliers. That's a real key component, and you really need to work on those skills. And if you need help beforehand, you've got that list of mentors. Reach out. This is why we're doing them. I mean, I've been happy to sit down with any of you all to help in anything. I've been in economic development for about 30 years, so if I don't know the answer, I know pretty much the call. This is a team effort, so.
One more thing, I know.
Okay, now
you're
that
ready to
I'm
go.
off.
Okay, when we do the pitch night, are we just pitching or the panel asking questions?
Well, what happens, first of all, the week before, we will draw names and see the order in which you will be delivering your pitch. You've got 8 minutes to present your pitch, and then we'll have about 2 or 3 minutes that the judges can ask you questions. Perhaps you didn't give any information about how you're going to finance or use the money, or how you're going to market it. I mean, I don't know what it will be. But we try, because there's so many, we try to, Nita or Kathy, somebody's going to be in back saying you've got 1 minute left, you need to wrap it up. And don't forget, don't wait till the last minute to come and check. If you're going to be using PowerPoint, make sure you check things out. You can send it to us early, or you can come and make an appointment here and check it on this computer, or you can bring your own, especially if you have stuff on a Mac, you might want to bring your own, and to make sure that the connection to go into this system, they use an HDMI to go to the projector, just to make sure it works. But we'll work with you any way we can. We know how important this is to you, and we want to make it easy. Let's give a hand to our presenters tonight. It means a lot for them to give up their evenings whole evening to come out and help us. So that's it. Have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Well,
Appreciate it.